Welcome to our video series on C++. C++ is a versatile, popular coding language most frequently used for game development, engineering, and robotics. In this video, we'll be discussing variables within C++. So to run our code, we'll be using an online compiler that you can find by going to this website. It's one of the first results if you search up C++ online compilers. And to actually get started with the C++ file, there are some things that we have to put into our IDE or compiler. And so the first thing is you should delete some of the comments that are already in place, such as these. And at the top, we're going to add a couple more assets. So let's just copy and paste a couple of these so we only have to change a couple of things. Let's include the string and let's include IO manip. And then we can delete this. This is extra. And we have to start using namespace as std. And so the code that we'll be writing, we'll just write it within the main class. And now let's talk about variables. So variables are used to store data within programming and come in different forms based on the type of data that they'll be storing. The way that you initialize a variable or give it a value is as following. So if you do a double slash, it creates a comment which the computer can't read or the compiler won't see, but the programmer can see. So first you have to have the variable type, and then you have a variable name, and then lastly you have an equal sign and then the value. And the value is going to correspond based on what type of data type the variable is. So let's dive into the different types of variables. So first we have a string, and this represents any word or phrase. So some examples could include hello world or my name is. And one thing that's important to realize about strings is that they're encapsulated or stuck between two double quotes. So they use two double quotes or quotation marks. Next, we have integers, and these are whole numbers without decimals. So some examples include 5, 10, 15, 20. So those are all integers. Third, we have floats, and these are numbers with decimals, or they can include decimals. So some examples include 5.5, 10.5, 15.5, and even 20.0, because as long as there's a decimal, that makes it a float. Next, we have booleans, and these are the most simple type of data and take up the least amount of space in a program because the only values that can hold are true or false. So the only examples are false and true. Last but not least, we have characters, and these stand for any singular letter, number, symbol, space, or even punctuation. So some examples could include the letter A. As for a number, we could have 9. We could have a symbol like the dollar sign. We could have a space even. And lastly, we can have some type of punctuation like an exclamation mark. So what's important to know about characters is that, like strings, it uses quotes, but it only uses single quotes. So the way to differentiate between a string and a character is by the number of quotes that they have. So now with this information, let's create some examples. Let's say one of each for each data type. So first, let's start off with string. So what we would do is write string and then our variable name, and let's say my name. And if you want to indicate a space within a variable name, you can't actually do this because it causes an error. So in programming, it's a common technique to just use underscores. So string my name and let's put Raj as our name. And at the end of each line in C++, we have to have a semicolon so that the compiler knows to go to the next line. Then we can have integers, and let's have an integer favorite number, and let's put it as 7. Then we can have a float and my age. And let's say I'm 17.8 years old because my birthday's coming up. Then let's create one for a Boolean. So Boolean, I'm over 18. And we can set that equal to false, or it could be equal to true. And last but not least, for a character, we can have character, favorite, punctuation, and we could set that equal to, with single quotes, an exclamation point. So all in all, the overall concept is here we would have what type of data the variable is. Here we have our name for the variable, and then here we have the value that it's assigned to. So now let's say that we're trying to access it anywhere else in this class. We just have to call my name. We don't have to say string my name or int my favorite number. We can just call favorite number and the value that it's pointing to is 7. So the program will work with 7. And let's say we changed it to 14, then the program would work with 14. And everywhere that we see favorite number, it would automatically change, which is one of the reasons why we use variables, especially when we don't know when a value is going to be set in stone or if it's going to change based on the situation that it's placed under. However, let's say that there is a situation where the value that a variable has does not change. So the way that we do that within C++ is there's something called a constant variable. And the way to initialize a constant variable is first you put the keyword const, then you put the variable type, then you put the variable name, and then you put an equal sign, and then the value you want to assign it to. So one thing to know about constant variables is that you can never change the value after it's already initialized. So let's think of an example where something is always going to stay the same. So let's use baker's dozen as an example. Baker's dozen is always 13. So the way that we declare a variable is through const, and then we have the variable type. Since it's a numerical value, it's either a float or an integer, but 13 is a whole number, so we'll use integer as it makes the most sense. Then we have baker's dozen. And one practice which is really helpful within programming for constant variables is always using all capitals for their name. So we have constant int baker's dozen, and then we set it equal to 13. So anywhere you see baker's dozen, it's always going to be 13, and you cannot change this value after it's already initialized once. So last but not least, I want to kind of circle back to the different characteristics that a character value can have. Because we know how we said it could be a letter, number, a symbol. Oh, I misspelled symbol, space, or punctuation. Well, there's whenever we have characters, we want to be able to distinguish what type it is. So there are many built-in functions that C++ has so that we know what type of character that we're dealing with. So the first function that we have is called isSpace, and then inside of the parenthesis we have a character value, and then this is going to return either true or false if the character is a space. So let's say we run favorite punctuation, which is a character variable, into isSpace. It's going to return false because it's a punctuation. It's not a space. But instead, let's say we put a space here, it would return true. Second, we have is upper, and then again a character value, and this will return true if the character value is uppercase. So let's say we had a capital A, it would return a true, whereas if we had a lowercase a, it would return false. Next, we have is lower, and it's the same thing, but it returns true. It only returns true if the letter is lowercase. So it'd be A, for example, would give us a positive or a true value. So the next function that we have is called isDigit, and there's a character value, of course. And this returns true if there's any character that's between 0 and 9. So this is how we look for numbers, but if it's double digits, that means it'll have to be an integer or float because characters can only be single digits or one character in length. So the isDigit returns true if the character is between 0 and 9. Next, we have isAlpha and then a character value. And this will return true if it's any letter within the alphabet. So a letter in the alphabet, and such as A, B, C, D, all the way to Z. And then last but not least, we have is punct, and that stands for is punctuation, the character value. And this will return true if there is a punctuation, or if it's any symbol that does not fall within all of these other categories. So those were all of the different types of variables that we use within C++, and I hope you learned something new, and thank you for watching till the end.